Okay, good evening. My name is Keisha Rogers, and I want to welcome you to tonight's Monday Strategic Overview and Discussion. It's October 7th, and I'll be joined by Brian Lance tonight. As people know, we are now in the aftermath of one of the most devastating hurricanes that's hit the southeast coast. And this is now only at only 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene hit Florida and devastated parts of the southeast from Georgia to North Carolina, which has been hit tremendously, to parts of Tennessee. We are now in the direction of the next hurricane, which is now forming in the Gulf, that could soon be hitting some of these same areas in Florida at a Category 4, Category 5 hurricane. And as that's happening, where leadership is needed, leadership is certainly not being found amongst the insanity of the Biden-Harris regime, and it's not being found by the policies which they represent. That is not America first, but America last. It has been extraordinary that you've had President Trump come to the region, starting with Georgia, and has made a prerogative to come in to start a fundraiser, which has raised over millions of dollars, while Kamala Harris talks about $750, which is a disaster, a joke, and it's not true. While, as we already know, they have been giving more funds and money to the migrants and immigrants, illegals coming across our border. And on top of that, if you wanted to be more outraged and devastated by the insanity of the Kamala administration and Biden administration, then you can look to the fact that their concern for things like FEMA is not only providing relief and support to illegals, but also to saying that the prerogative and the priority should be on equity and DEI. And we need to be worried about those people who are facing even more problems because they have to deal with the fact of disaster equity. And so this is one of the newest outrages that is emerging. But I can tell you, as someone who is living in this area, it is not untrue what you're seeing from the responses that are coming directly from the communities. Many people might remember during the time of Hurricane Harvey and the aftermath, you had people talking about how rapidly the Cajun Army and how rapidly you had the communities come together. Well, you've had this in such an enormous force in these regions where you've had people with their personal helicopters come in. You've had people, and there's all kinds of backlash to that and all kinds of things that are being put out. And it is true, there are efforts on many fronts to try to stop the type of relief and support that people are providing. But I can tell you it's not really working. And people are coming in. They're coming in with their tractors. They're coming in with resources. I was working with a church. They just announced that we got somebody coming from Wisconsin, and they're driving here and they're carrying truckloads of material. But more importantly, in the local effort, it's been extraordinary. The love that's been poured out. I was attending a Republican women's event earlier today, and the sheriff was speaking at the event. And I mean, he was always of the local county. where I live, he was almost moved to tears by just the outpouring of love, support, the quick mobilization of the community that came out and was providing all types of resources. The churches are doing what the churches were designed to do and made to do. They aren't just sitting back and watching and saying, bless you, let me pray for you. They're saying, we're turning our prayers into action. And you can see this tremendously. You have groups like Samaritans First, and so many others that are coming out. And so, as I was stating at the beginning, we are now looking as we are cleaning up from Hurricane Helene. Most people in Florida have not even cleaned up from Helene, let alone the fact that not just it's been 2 years now, Hurricane Ian. They haven't cleaned up from that. The reported disaster and costs, and Brian may go through this a little bit more as he's going to discuss how we build our way out of this and what type of leadership is going to be required. But I will say it's been reported that Helene is the second deadliest U.S. hurricane in 50 years. And there's an estimated cost of $250 billion. The hurricane season is not over. As I just said, we have another one building up in the Gulf now, about to hit some of the same regions of the coast of Florida that just was devastated by Hurricane Helene. I can tell you that on top of just the massive support and mobilization that's coming from the communities in these areas, you also have people coming in, such as what President Trump is doing. And there was a very profound video and statement that was put forth that was put out with the visit of Tulsi Gabbard in North Carolina, in Rutherford, North Carolina, as she visited some of the disaster sites and talked to people there on the grounds. Just quickly, I think it really gives a sense of just the beauty of the mobilization and how people came together here. So if I can play that, I will do that here. Let me just see if I can get that to work. Here we go.
Touchdown, we were able to get on a helicopter so we could get a bird's eye view of the Lake Lure and Chimney Rock area.
This is the whole team right here for the town.
Sorry.
Armin, can you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Happened. It's hard to put into words what that devastation is and what it's going to take for them to even begin to start thinking about rebuilding. It's going to be a long road ahead.
So this is the operation. We're so fortunate to be so loved by everybody. We haven't had a natural disaster like this in Western North Carolina in a very long time. So the outpouring is amazing. And as you can see, volunteers galore, and it's just, so heartfelt.
It is incredible how far people travel to come here, both to help and also to get the supplies.
The help from all over Florida, Michigan, the Northeast. They're driving a amount of distance to come here. As far as a volunteer, all over South Carolina and Eastern North Carolina and Georgia.
Rebuilding here, it's just going to be so expensive.
Yeah.
I own the Chimney Rock Inn.
Okay.
Back is missing. Where the blue styrofoam's at.
Yep.
Our apartment is right under that.
Wow.
You got the mountains around, everything gets funneled in there. So you get this raging torrent, wall of water. It comes down the river, rock, mud, trees, houses, buildings, and it's just like a giant bulldozer slamming and everything. It just kind of clears it all out.
But anything to keep us alive.
Real.
We got water, MREs, we got some of that stuff. We're ready for the apocalypse. We need help building this road back. We need a big retaining wall. We need the park reopened. We need Beatles Road all the way up. That's the kind of help we need.
Yeah.
We got chainsaws. We got water.
Yep.
We need structure.
Yep. Appreciate my best.
We definitely appreciate you being here, though.
Well, that's, you know, the smallest thing we can do is just to try to lift up your voices, your stories, and what the needs really are here. But nice to meet you. We'll see. Thanks for what you guys are doing. Nice to meet you. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
We clear all the way down.
Thank you very much. Good to
Thanks,
see you.
We're strong. We just need help.
Okay, so as you heard in the discussion that in the response that Tulsi was getting there, as the person was saying in the video, we have the chainsaws, we have the generator, we have everything we need. We need the structures built, and was talking about we need help with building these roads. And if just show you one last thing quickly here. So there's numerous pictures and things I could show you, but that's just when they talk about needing help building the structures again. So this, I believe it's a part of the, you have, look at the part of the highway collapsing, I-40 here, and a lot of the area coming in from North Carolina into Tennessee. This is one of the areas that's been collapsed there, and you just think about what it's going to take to rebuild this, rebuild structures, bridges, dams that have collapsed in this way. And it's going to take moving dirt, moving total mobilization. It's going to take infrastructure. And Brian is going to give us more of the bigger picture of what it's going to take to rebuild, and why, as we've been saying, we need to just totally put the pressure on this administration. We are now 28 days away from the most important election of our lifetime. And people saw the power of President Trump and J.D. Vance and Elon Musk and others going back to Butler, Pennsylvania, the first area of the first shooting, an assassination attempt against President Trump. In the midst of all of this going on, President Trump is resilient. He's ready to stand with the American people. And at the same time, we have total imbeciles and insanity going on when the American people needs us most. In a time of crisis, in a time of loss, in a time of hurt, bodies are still floating, being found. It's a devastation, and it's not even over yet. And so everybody, you're talking about North Carolina also being a swing state. How are these people going to vote? How are these people going to rebuild? So there's so much that we need to discuss here, but what you are really are responsible for is making sure that you're doing, as Elon said, and Trump said, and so everything in your power to get out there and get everyone you know to vote, because your life depends on it. And you can see from this crisis how important this is, because it's not over. And any more of Kamala and Joe is just going to be a dead end. So let me turn it over to Brian now. I just wanted to kind of give that opening on the situation on the grounds and kind of direct the picture here and look for Brian's brilliant solutions. Fill us up. Let me put you on here.
Okay. All right.
Hold on one second.
Let me just say, we're going to put America to work. I mean, people saw Elon Musk. I'm sure a lot of you jumping up and down on that stage. I mean, here he is. He's responsible basically for putting virtually every rocket we have in space up there. He's built Tesla. He's doing all this. He saved, as Trump said in his opening, in introducing Elon there in Butler, that he had saved free speech, and waging a fight on that front. But here he is, just this billionaire jumping up and down on the stage, so happy to be there. And it really captures a change, a transformation that's going on in the American people. And more, it's not simply MAGA, but much beyond that. Like Tulsi Gabbard is an example herself, lieutenant colonel in the reserves, former congresswoman, former vice chair of the Democratic Party nationally, and she's campaigning for Trump, along with Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Elon and many others. So, this is an extraordinary transformation that's going on. So it's important to have this sense that we can put America to work again. We can solve these things, and we should not be in a situation that every time, the Mother Nature gives us a kick in the butt, that we act like we've been kicked over a cliff, a 300-foot cliff. I mean, we're not in control of the universe. We have to continually develop more effective means of ensuring the general welfare, the intention of the Constitution, and so we're going to go to work to do that. Now, yes, structures, absolutely structures, and that's what we can do. It's been mentioned. We've been talking about it a bit. If you go back to 1937, 1938, you had the Ohio River flood of January 1938. I'm sure J.D. Vance knows something about this, knows the stories and so forth. But Paducah was completely underwater. Cincinnati was partially underwater. 500 plus people died. Massive rainfall was the cause, massive flooding, massive of the whole Ohio River Valley. And Harry Hopkins, FDR's arguably at least one of his right-hand men, I wouldn't say his only, but Harry Hopkins mobilized the Works Progress Administration and their work teams, and they put 100,000 men on the ground in the Ohio River in a matter of days, literally like 24, 48 hours. And that was 1937. And again in 1938, and the Great New England hurricane, again, it cost hundreds and hundreds of lives, some 700 lives. Massive devastation. 146,000 men were mobilized and were there on the ground. So, what's lacking now, and it is still lacking in terms of Florida. I'll come back to that in a second, because of what they're facing now. What's now a Cat 5 hurricane, Hurricane Milton, that's heading that way. But if you it's a failure of leadership. Leaders have to mobilize the forces. The forces are there. We have a National Guard structure in the nation now. We didn't have that in 1937, 38. We have far more resources. We have the U.S. Army Material Command, 168,000 men, that provides logistics for some 800 military bases across the world. And they can be mobilized and deployed in conjunction with the state governments. We're not going to violate the Posse Comitatus law. It's not a matter of proposing the federal government, the U.S. military in particular, come in and take over. That's just hot air to talk like that. The point is that the U.S. military can be mobilized to work in joint structures. And there's one that exists now, right now, in the operation in North Carolina. The joint structure, the joint command, the general, let's see if I can find his name really quick here. I wrote it down. Wes Morris, Brigadier General Wes Morris is in charge, the Joint Command of the National Guard and the U.S. Regular active military soldiers that are deployed into North Carolina, into West North Carolina, the hardest hit area there. That joint command can be expanded if the president so orders, if the commands come down. I mentioned Florida. There's a statement out from the White House today on how FEMA's preparing this and FEMA's preparing that and FEMA's preparing that for Florida. You think Governor DeSantis gives a damn about what FEMA's doing? Really? I mean, think he's going to wait for FEMA? But also, there's not a single mention in that press statement coming from the White House about the U.S. Army, the U.S. military. Well, if you go over and look, in the pages of, if you go to the website of the U.S. Army, for example, you can find a press release. They've been requested by the White House and FEMA to pre-position forces, material, high wheel vehicles, helicopters, and so forth for this storm that's coming in. But it's not even mentioned in the White House statement. This is the kind of bifurcation, bureaucratization, politicalization that prevents the kind of collaboration that's required. So I wanted to stress that. But the job now in North Carolina, but also in Georgia, South Carolina, up into Tennessee. I mean, this hurricane, I'm now speaking about Hurricane Helene, hit a very broad area. It hit a lot of people by surprise. They've never had a storm like this go inland the way it did. As that gentleman was saying in that short video that with Tulsi Gabbard there, said, it comes down that much rain, in some places 30 inches, comes down off those mountains, funnels right down into those rivers. That water coming down brings down the mud, the trees, entire trees. I mean, you had concrete houses floating down the rivers. I mean, it's a powerful force that was unleashed, absolutely powerful. And so now you've got to build out, and you got to build it so that this doesn't happen again. And that means, as Keisha mentioned, infrastructure. The first thing is water. Now, the Army Corps of Engineers has been in there. They've been assessing the water situation. There's plenty of bottled water, but you need water for sanitation. You got for showers, for the toilets. You've got to get water systems back up and running. Obviously, energy. They're positioning, pre-positioning, moving in generators and so forth. That's a start. But as Keisha, who's there in Tennessee, and I were talking about a little bit ago, I mean, the temperatures are dropping down to the low 40s, within the week. It's going to get cold there, and you've got hundreds of thousands of people that have no regular housing. 17,000 was the last count in terms of the number of people that are in hotels just in North Carolina. But the point is, the U.S. Material Command, Quartermaster General Material Command and so forth, the U.S. military can mobilize the resources from the heavy earth-moving equipment, some of which is already reaching there. I mean, there's a heavy equipment that's coming down as far away as the Hudson Valley in New York. In terms of National Guard capabilities, but more heavy moving equipment. You've got to get contractors in there. The Army Corps of Engineers works with contractors. You've got to get contractors in there. Another element of this, you've got a lot of unemployed people right now there, particularly in the western part of North Carolina. Well, a lot of them, like in the Asheville area, were working in breweries and coffee shops, this kind of stuff. I mean, it's an art scene, Hey, we got better jobs for them. We got better jobs right now for lots of people in this country who are wasted on temporary gig jobs, delivering pizzas and so on and so forth. We can put people to work with contractors, with qualified Army Corps of Engineers people, and put them to work building back out these roads. You got to clear the roads, but you got to build the retaining walls, as the lady was saying. And that tape, you got to build the retaining walls. Otherwise, the whole mountain's going to come down next, right? So you've got to put in real viable structures, and you got to get those roads off up above the a river as well, protected. So water, energy, power restoration, hospitals. You've got emergency teams down there. I mean, entire emergency room teams have come in from relatively small cities and towns. But just again on the western part of North Carolina. Keep in mind, Charlottesville is just 2 hours away from that region. Other major cities in North Carolina itself, they're sending in resources, lots of resources. But the big equipment, the heavy investment that's got to follow to rebuild the entire infrastructure of the region, this requires a mobilization on a scale to what was done in 1937-38, for example. And in terms of Florida, obviously, it's going to require even more to take care of that, to do that. These efforts, they start at the local level, the local communities, state, and then the U.S. government's supposed to step in to backstop them in cases of major emergencies. And the way it's structured now is this incompetent, politicized agency called FEMA, and otherwise it's the U.S. military, and coordinating with volunteers and so forth to do the job. So that's what we have to set in motion. So really, we haven't broken ground yet on what has to be built out, but we can. There has to be appropriations from Congress, not equity, DEI, stipulations or whatever, but straightforward appropriations. Farmers in Georgia, they've lost a third of their pecan crop, a third of the cotton crop. Georgia, the biggest employer in Georgia is agriculture, and it's been creamed. All right. They need money right now to keep them afloat, to keep the farmers afloat. They've lost their crops, large portions of their crops. There's bridges down all the way up to Virginia, included in Virginia, at least two that I know of, major, overpasses that are out. There's going to have to be a lot of construction here. This is an opportunity to change the direction of the country by example, to do what's needed. And it can be so ordered. Now we have the problem, which is that the president to be elected 28 days from now does not take office until January 20th. So we're going to have to move mountains politically to get underway the actual scale of project that's required to remoralize the people of that entire region, including all the way down to Florida, and dealing with the consequences of Hurricane Milton, and build beyond that the in-depth industrial base of the U.S. economy again. They can manage such crises in the future. The problem is what we don't produce. Think about West North Carolina, going back to it. Wood products, furniture making, those are products of that region. Natural resources otherwise, but forest products, furniture making, a lot of small companies in that region. why is the whole region, why are large chunks of the South still basically plantations, today? It doesn't have to be. We can make these prosperous, growing, productive areas of the country as we expand outward again as a productive industrial economy, making America a manufacturing superpower again. So here's the first test, and we can apply the political pressure to get it done, even before President Trump takes office. I think that's what I wanted to say at the moment, Keisha. If you have any questions or thoughts, please join in.
Okay, that's very good, very thorough. And I know I actually was just looking at one of the biggest areas that's been hit, as you said, is water, the need for water infrastructure, but also energy. And there was a report that came out a couple of days ago on how the scale of Helene affected left parts of Augusta, Georgia, basically completely dark. And they have images taken from the NASA Earth Observatory, and you could see a month ago. If I can get the photos together, I'll show them a little bit later on because it's very interesting contrast here. A month ago, the area was just lit up, and looking at the observatory images there, and now it's almost complete darkness with just a small area in the downtown area that has lighting. So that's what you're also having to work on, people. And someone did bring up in the chat remarks about Elon Musk and providing the internet service under as far as Starlink, and how much of a help that this has been to the people of the region, especially in North Carolina.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah.
I know friends who live in North Carolina. They were stuck in areas. They didn't have any way to call for help or respond. And these are people that I knew directly. And because they were able to get that internet access, a lot of people's life were saved. A lot of people weren't sitting at home with the inability to reach out to other people. But
yeah, that
was
reminds me
yeah, very important.
Oh, I was just going to say, it reminds me of Congressman Corey Mills, as an example. Trump gave him a shout out at the rally there in Pennsylvania, in Butler. But Corey Mills, congressman from Florida, he was right there on the ground in Georgia and then North Carolina, leading rescue teams. Rappelling out of a helicopter to deliver medicine. He was asked about, what was required, and he said it's leadership. You gotta be on the ground. You gotta, as Harry Hopkins was immediately on the ground in the Ohio River Valley. If you're going to successfully mobilize the nation, you got to do it by example. And Elon Musk and his effort, and Trump, are exemplary of that quality of leadership, which is remoralizing the country, really, like we haven't seen it in more than a generation.
Yes,